Thank you and welcome. And so happy that you have decided to spend a little bit of your evening with us. I'm Dr. Catherine Mosley, a member of the Right to Life of Michigan's Black Leadership Committee. I'm a retired pediatrician and neonatologist. And just to let you know, a neonatologist is a kind of pediatrician that specializes in taking care of sick newborns. I'm also the parent of an adult son. I have retired from medical practice a few years ago, but I practiced for over 30 years. It was the experience of seeing late term abortions being done on babies at the same gestational age that we were saving in the newborn ICU that made me pro life. And I'm very happy to be a member of the Black Leadership Committee for Right to Life of Michigan. So during COVID time, we've been trying to educate the community through these live streams about how abortion specifically targets the Black community and reach out. So please keep coming back to our Facebook page to check for new information. Now, here on our page and on the Right to Life of Michigan main page and website, you can also find information about the many options available for anyone who might be experiencing a surprise pregnancy. Now, this talk tonight is the second in a series of 4 discussions that we're presenting during Black History Month. The overall goal of the entire series is to share information and to continue to raise awareness about abortion in the Black community in the hope that we can make a positive difference and spark further conversations going forward. But tonight, we want to share about the amazing development of unborn children in the womb. And just as an aside, Crystal and I have a script that we're reading from. So if it looks like we're reading from a script, we are, but we don't want to miss or mess up any of this important information. So as I said, tonight I'm joined by a new friend and colleague, Crystal Kennard, and I'm going to let her introduce herself right now.
Hi, my name is Crystal Kennard. I'm a mother of two young men, ages 8, 19, and 22. I have a bachelor's degree in business management from Morgan State University. I am currently employed at Ann Arbor Public Schools as a community assistant. I am located at Pathways High School, and as a community assistant, I am responsible for the safety and security of the building and assisting students as needed, problem solving, and with crisis. As a faith based person, I have always been pro life. I did not get active until 2019 when I read a pamphlet, Abortion, a Black Woman's Voice. I am active with 40 Days for Life and on the committee for multicultural outreach with Right to Life for Michigan. I hope you enjoy our presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Crystal. So we're going to get started. And audience, please feel free to comment in the comment boxes or ask questions on Facebook live stream, and we will try and address them as we go. So first things first, before we continue, we want you to know that all the ages that we're going to use in this presentation are from the point of fertilization, which is also called conception. Pregnancy is often measured as starting about 2 weeks before fertilization, which is right around the time of the last missed period. But to avoid confusion, we're going to start where our lives actually begin, the moment of fertilization. At that moment, a unique, unrepeatable human being is brought into existence. During fertilization, the sperm fertilizes the egg. Two cells become one, fusing their DNA together to create a unique new human life. This new life is distinct from the other two and has its own DNA, different from the mother or the father or any other person in the entire world. Once that happens, our unique genetic code sets in motion what I like to call a construction and maintenance program, sort of like a computer program that continues for the rest of our lives. We don't have to think about digesting our food, getting oxygen into our lungs, having our heart beat. This program that started at the moment of fertilization takes care of that for us, usually seamlessly.
The first trimester includes 10 weeks of growth past fertilization. The small circle at the center of this sonogram may not look like much, but look like a little sac in a baby cocoon called a gestational sac. The cells that make up this sac will begin to specialize. Some cells will become part of the placenta. Some will form the amniotic sac that will fill with fluid to cushion the developing baby. Other cells are destined to form everything from delicate eyelashes to muscles and skin.
So I'm going to interrupt you, Crystal, for just a second, because, everybody's sitting here looking at this hole and they're saying, like, why did they put up a black hole? Really, what do we care? But what you can't see is the little tiny microscopic embryo that's inside that hole. That little embryo has made that little sac with all the membranes and everything that it will be. It's the first example of this genetic program at work.
Several days after fertilization, this rapidly growing new life implants into the lining of the uterus. At 21 days, the heart starts beating. At 4 weeks, the brain and the spinal cord begin to form. Most women become aware that they are pregnant at around 5.5 weeks. This is more than 1 month into the pregnancy and after the heart has begun to beat.
Now, one would think that this isn't much of anything, but what you can't see, what is microscopic, that between 4 and 8 weeks, the baby's hormones start being produced. He's producing his own insulin and testosterone.
At 8 weeks, the fingers have grown and separated, and you can now see the toes.
So by 8 weeks, all of the organs that the baby have, all the organs that we have are present and formed, though some are in the rudimentary form, but everything is there.
Eyes, nose, lips, and tongue continue to develop. Throughout the pregnancy, the brain develops an average of 250,000 new neurons every single minute. After 8 weeks, the child is no longer called an embryo, but is now a fetus.
So just to keep confusion out of this, embryo and fetus are scientific terms for developmental stages. It doesn't mean that the embryo is not human, but the fetus is. It's the same way of calling 2-year-olds toddlers and 15-year-olds teenagers. It's just it's a term for a developmental stage, nothing more. Though some people might say that toddlers and teenagers might be less than human sometimes.
Fingernails start to grow to form at 10 weeks, and the kidneys can produce urine.
That's so beautiful. So
That is,
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say what she has up there is just the end of the first trimester.
That's right. And you can see the little toes and the little fingers. It's just, no, it doesn't look perfectly like a baby that you would take home. It's got a lot of growing to do, any more than the cake that you bake in the oven. When you take it out after 10 minutes, doesn't look like your cake. But everything is in there that will eventually look like your own little Gerber baby.
The second trimester consists of week 11 through week 25. At week 14, The child's mouth makes sucking motions and she develops her hair pattern. At 16 weeks, the mother might feel movement and the child can actually suck her thumb.
And I think we have a nice video here of a child kicking mom, which I'm sure she felt. You see, they're very, very big. They're not just some little inert something or other. They're busy. They're moving around all the time. And right around this time, you can start to notice their personality. They've had it, but the mom can feel some babies like that one we just saw are extremely active and want mom to move around a lot, don't like sitting still, are kicking and pushing. Others are fairly placid. And believe it or not, they maintain that type of personality, at least for a while after birth. And some mothers would say, like, yeah, that's who they were. They were busy inside, and they've been busy ever since they were born. And some of you can probably relate to that.
At 18 weeks, the child is about 10 inches long. The child can feel pain as early as 20 weeks and can turn from side to side and front to back.
So one of the things that's exciting about 18 weeks is that it's one of the earliest times that actually fetal surgery can be done, so that we can actually exteriorize part of the womb. And if you look, I don't know if you can see this little hand is coming out of the womb and trying to grab the surgeon's finger. This is a little boy who was having a Spina Bifida repair. This was back in 1999. So we've got a little guy who's like 12 years old now. This was him. So this is the mom's womb, and this is the little hand. And I'm not sure that you can see it, but the little hand reaching out. And yes, they do give them anesthesia at this age because they can feel pain.
She weighs about 1 pound at 22 weeks. At 24 weeks, she can hear outside sounds.
Now, one of the cool things about hearing outside sounds is years ago, some researchers wanted to really see, it's like, can they really hear anything through the womb? But realize, especially when they get to be that size, that there's really like less than an inch of tissue between them and the outside world. So they asked a group of mothers who like soap operas to watch the same soap opera, I think it was Days of Our Lives, every day and during their last trimester. And so what happened was when the babies were born and the baby started crying in the nursery, they played the theme song to that soap opera and the babies quieted down immediately because somehow they must have realized, oh, this is the time where I sit down and watch TV with mom. So they do hear and they remember, even more importantly.
Through ultrasound, we can see her hiccuping, smiling, and frowning, and you see the ear.
Yes.
We kind of skipped
Did we skip something?
I think we did. We kind of moved up. We did. That's okay. I'll just keep going. At the end of the second trimester, okay, the third trimester is from week 26 till birth. At 26 weeks, sleep patterns exist and rapid eye movement suggests there is dreaming. Eyelids reopen after being closed for months.
So during this time, most of the baby's third trimester is spent gaining weight. It's one of the ways that we assess how long the baby has been inside, for want of a better word, the gestational age for preemies is how fat they are, how much fat tissue they've got. If they're long and skinny and their skin is kind of thin, we know that they came out very early. But the big chubby babies are the ones that stayed in till, as we say, they stayed in the oven until they were done. But they do, the moms walking during the day and so forth. I remember many times I would have a mom of a newborn come in complaining that the baby never liked to be put down. And I would ask her, well, what did you do during the last trimester? Were you sitting down all the time? Did you teach? Did you walk around? Were you an instructor? What were you a waitress? And they would always talk about that they spent a lot of time on their feet. And I said, well, yeah, this little baby is used to movement all day long. And all of a sudden you put him or her down flat. They're like going like, excuse me, what's wrong with you, woman? Pick me back up again and walk with me. And once they do that, they're quite happy and satisfied. And so is mom, thanks be to God.
The baby exercises by kicking and stretching. The bones are fully developed, but still soft.
Now, this is most interesting. Well, I mean, the whole thing is interesting because how this happens and how everything is timed is just amazing. But so babies, the babies could get bigger. And some people say that actually the fourth trimester is actually after the baby's born, because if you notice, human babies are born much more immature than, say, monkey babies or any other mammal's babies. Like giraffes can stand up and walk around, so can cows. Human babies can't do anything. But we are limited by the size of our head and our giant brain and the size of mom's pelvis. If the head gets too big to go through the pelvis before the invention of C-sections and so forth, both mom and baby would die in childbirth because the baby can't get out. So despite the fact that our heads are so big, what happens is, first off, the bones in the head are not fused together like an adult's bones. So as the baby starts to go down the birth canal, the bones slide over each other. And some of you may notice that babies who have been in labor for a long time, we would sort of nickname them cone heads. They would have this pointy end on the end because they had been trying to get through, and their, excuse me, their bones would not fuse, but slide over each other. Also, the arms and legs and the shoulders also have to sort of mush. That's not a medical term, but it's a term I'm going to use because you understand what it means. Sort of mush together to get through that narrow passageway. And there's a certain way that they have to turn and move this way and this. So they really go through a lot. And so their bones cannot be rigid. We would be a mass of broken bones if we tried to do that as fully grown.
At 32 weeks, pupils can dilate and contract, and the connection between the nerve cells in the brain are increased. At 36 weeks, baby fat is increasing rapidly. Baby's head may start to reposition down in preparation for birth, which occurs about 38 weeks after fertilization.
Now, this is another amazing thing because as the baby gets bigger, the uterus gets bigger, but there's only about so much. So the baby is really curled up, but most of the time head up. So when they start to stretch, they are kicking the mother's bladder. So if you've ever been around pregnant women, you will notice that all of a sudden they have to get up and go to the ladies' room really quickly because baby has given them a kick. Now, for reasons, again, we don't know what starts this, but most babies come out head first, but most of their time is spent head up. What happens? Somehow in that very small space, they flip. They do a complete somersault inside this womb without getting tangled in anything, and they become head down so that they can exit the appropriate way. Because the reason they need to exit head first and not feet first is their head expands the birth canal so that the rest of the body can come out. If the feet come out first, there's a big problem. And those of you who might have watched Call the Midwife will notice about what they do with the breech birth, because the head gets hung up because it hadn't dilated and opened the way. And so it's sort of an emergency. And sometimes you end up, when you can, doing a C-section or using other maneuvers to get that head out without causing damage to the baby. So again, another miracle. Why do most of us come out head first?
While baby is being born, many incredible changes happen as they move from the supported environment of the uterus to independent existence. As a baby is being born, his head can change shape under pressure because the bones in their skulls haven't fused together yet. The most dramatic change at birth is when the newborn takes their first breath. The lungs inflate and fill the air sacs within the lungs. Blood starts to flow to the lungs and gas exchange begins. A newborn baby's first breath will be the most difficult of their life.
And that is the absolute truth, because it has to occur under great high pressure. So you think about this baby has basically been an aquatic animal. He or she's been living in this amniotic fluid. He's not had to take a breath, though they do exercise their lungs a little bit and diaphragm by sort of breathing in and out the amniotic fluid a bit. But they've not had to use their lungs. Blood flow really doesn't go to the lungs. So one of the other purposes of going through that birth canal and being smushed together is when they pop out, boom, their lungs, the chest expands, and they, the same way if somebody's pushing on your chest and all of a sudden, let's go, you go, but to do that, what they have to do is take in such a deep, hard breath that as they breathe in, all the amniotic fluid disappears from the lungs and the lungs fill up with air. And in that same moment, the blood vessels to the lungs open up and start sending this blood, which has just been going, very little blood had been going to the lungs. All this blood has to go to the lungs. It has to pick up the oxygen and send it back, because now the umbilical cord, which had been providing oxygen and nutrients and pretty much anything the baby wanted and needed to it, is being clamped. So that's gone. And so they have to do this and take these giant breaths. And that's why we, excuse me, people are so concerned about whether the baby's crying or not. Because if they can cry, that means they can generate enough pressure to get all that fluid out of there. Babies that are born by C-section do get a little bit of that squeeze, but not quite as much. And so sometimes they'll have a problem clearing that fluid and end up needing oxygen and a brief stay in the newborn ICU with something that's either, you may have heard of, wet lung or transient tachypnea of the newborn. And that's just a little bit that amniotic fluid just gets left in their lungs, but they eventually clear it.
The baby's first breath triggers changes in the function of the heart. Special ducts and blood vessels that were essential to the baby's cardiovascular system while in the womb close rapidly because they are no longer needed. Blood flow through the umbilical cord drops to nothing once the cord is clamped. Before the baby is born, blood goes through the placenta to get rid of waste and to pick up oxygen and nutrients that come from the mother. The developing baby manages on relatively low oxygen levels while in the uterus. After birth, the child is exposed to suddenly higher oxygen levels. This shift requires different ways to protect the newborn. So the baby has systems ramped up to cope with this sudden food flood of oxygen. Physical changes plus shifts in biology and chemistry of the baby's system are required to cope with the outside world. Before birth, most of the baby's blood circulation passes through the placenta, but bypasses the lungs. After delivery, the placenta flow stops. Instead of going from the baby's heart to the placenta, the blood from the heart needs to redirect through the newly expanded lungs. It's no wonder new babies are so sleepy.
And that's the truth. However, for anyone who has had a newborn, you realize that that's just false advertising, because in a day or two, they start waking up and wanting to interact, generally at about 3 o'clock in the morning. But that's another story for another day. But truthfully, I mean, after watching this and seeing how this basic construction and maintenance program starts from that sperm and egg fusing together, and is I mean, even now, as all of us are sitting here talking, watching this, our bodies, our genetic code is doing the stuff it needs to do, and with the same and only the same information that it got from the moment of fertilization. There's no new added information. There's no new DNA. There's no new anything. These genes are turned on to do the things that they need to do. So we are undeniably human from the moment of fertilization to this moment. All of us were that little black hole that you saw at the beginning of the presentation. And truthfully, we all think this is just beyond amazing. And I hope you enjoyed learning about this. And if you're interested in learning more, please visit our website at rtl.org. And please come back to the Right to Life of Michigan Black Leadership page next week and join us as we talk about men's place in this pro-life discussion, as we present Powerless to Protect with David Robinson and Bobby Hesley. Thank you, Crystal, for being here tonight, and thank all of you for joining in. And hopefully we'll be able to